A new year, a new anime season. To be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of 2015. It had a few decent shows but didn't offer anything exceptional. That being said, I've got my fingers crossed for 2016, the first season being winter, and with the new year I'm going to be introducing a new style of seasonal videos. Normally what I do is I'd watch everything and then give some written thoughts. This time I'm going to be writing my thoughts as I watch each episode, similar to my anime roulette videos. I feel this gives a more raw representation of what I'm feeling and spices things up a little bit. But no more chit chatter, let's have a look at the first show. First series I'm going to be taking a look at is one I'm not too familiar with, but the promotional content I have seen gives some nice vibes. It seems like a fairly new staff team, so who knows what they can do. Let's have a look at the first episode. Instant reactions are very good. It seems like a slow meditative narrative with some really interesting visual choices. The series seems to take place inside the character's head as we're given a constant commentary of his life, and I think this is quite smart. It feels like a real dip into his psyche. And now the episode's taken a very dramatic turn, made a jump from completely mundane to crazy very quickly. It's quite an interesting choice. The show is progressing with its narrative quite nicely while using the same commentary style. It's also introducing some very interesting and possibly complex narrative ideas, but I won't spoil them in the video. It's doing all of this while maintaining its very fitting visual style. And those last minutes were very crazy, I didn't expect that at all. Overall this episode was great. It was quite simple so it didn't leave too much room for error, but regardless it was very well handled. What I'm most interested in is the narrative elements they introduced, adding in some dark undertones too. These have some real potential to do something awesome, but at the same time they have potential to go just as far in the opposite direction. This is definitely one I'll be keeping my eye on. Prince of Stride is definitely going to take us down a notch in terms of severity, and I feel we need that after the last episode. So it's a colourful sports anime. I can almost guarantee that I won't finish this series. I very rarely do with sports anime, but I normally enjoy the episodes that I do watch. Let's see if this is going to offer something new from the genre. Well, it seems to be setting itself up like every other sports anime, but I wasn't expecting it to do much more. That being said, the visuals are gorgeous, really powerful use of colour and textures. It's nice just to look at them. I'm going through to the halfway point now because the rest of the first half really didn't offer much. Basically set up a set of characters, but they're all very cliche. And skipping a bunch more dialogue to get to the part we all stayed for, the race. This was definitely worth the wait. It's fast, stylized, and incredibly nice to watch. It's like a less monotone 2D Mirror's Edge. Overall, the episode was unengaging with long periods of boring dialogue, but those moments of beautiful action made it worth the time. Which is nice for an episode, but I think that's it. I really doubt I could sit through another one despite how nice it looks. Next up is KyoAni's new show, Myriad Colors Phantom World. Now you probably know how I feel about KyoAni. They very rarely create anything I like. I normally feel like there's a lack of personality in their shows and I end up disconnected with the whole experience. But this one seems like a step away from their usual style, so I'm willing to give it a go. Let's see how it goes. It starts the episode with a big fat chunk of exposition. I mean, that's not the way to engage a viewer. That and the opening seem like pretty standard KyoAni visuals, albeit a bit more colourful. A few minutes in and it doesn't seem like it's the usual high school fluff. Looks like they're trying something new with a kind of fantasy sci-fi feel. Some nice directing anyway. We had a nice action scene, but this weird self-molestation scene put a damper on it. More exposition and some more exposition. Though I think the supernatural elements are pretty well put together, they just feel a bit wasted by the show's lack of sufficient writing and characters. I mean look, this kind of moment really is the lowest of low writing. And another chunk of exposition. I'm not sure how much more of the main character explaining stuff I can sit through. Now we have a limbo scene that started off quite nicely but quickly turned into a cheap showcase of their female characters. It lost its comedic value quite quickly and just kind of feels uncomfortable to watch. For me, it definitely took the show down a few notches. And that ends the episode. Until that final scene, I thought the episode was okay. The writing was pretty basic and it relied too much on unnecessary narrative explanations. But the visuals were quite interesting and there was points of nice directing. But for me, the last scene brought the whole episode down. It was shallow and didn't really add anything to the narrative whatsoever. Actually quite disappointing. I think I'll give it another couple of episodes though. There were glimmers of decent stuff in here, so who knows. Next up is a very interesting series, Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju. Pretty sure I mispronounced every single one of those words. I've not looked up much info in this series, but it looks very stylized, and with a 47-minute episode I'm quite intrigued. Let's see how it goes. So I'm about 10 minutes in and I'm completely hooked. What a fantastic set of characters. They seem more real and more interesting than what we normally get. They're also incredibly entertaining. Lots of different character types bouncing off each other. It is a really good watch so far. As well as the narrative style being brilliant, I love what they're doing with the visuals. This scene here shown in an almost slideshow style is just great. The episode seems to be keeping its level of quality. I was completely immersed in our character's performance. It was a performance within a performance, and it was so captivating. And an unexpectedly dramatic end to the episode. Overall, this blew me away. It was so engaging. Everything from the spectacular characters to the rich personality of the show, it was all fantastic. The narrative was simple, focusing on its characters to feel the episode, and it worked really well. I think the reason it worked was the variety in the characters' personalities. They were so diverse and it created a really dynamic story. Without a doubt, one of the best shows I've watched in a number of seasons. Now, I wasn't going to originally watch this series, but it was recommended by a number of people on the basis that it was a Masamune Shirow adaptation. Now, this doesn't necessarily excite me since his adaptations are really unpredictable. They tend to be completely different from his original work. That being said, I thought I'd give it a watch anyway. Let's take a look. The show seems to have some really interesting visual designs, but I'm so bored with the story already. The first few minutes were just a bunch of anime girls talking on a boat, and not only that, but they used extremely dull dialogue. Not really sure what to think yet, to be honest. I'm almost halfway through and the episode's now taking a turn in the direction of a more solid narrative. It's kind of gone from a completely minimal Moe-esque experience to a fully packed narrative in the space of a minute. I'm actually quite confused. The story seems completely overcrowded and none of the plot points seem to connect up. Now there's a really weird scene that's kind of put me off the episode. The Moe elements of the episode were okay, but it's starting to get a little bit weird now. I feel so disconnected with what's happening in the story. It just seems to be jumping around its narrative arbitrarily. It lacks any sort of structure and seems to have very little regard for the viewer's perspective, although I do like the general aesthetic of the show, so I might watch more on a rainy day, but for now I'm not going to continue. Grimoire is an episode I've really been looking forward to. Not because I think it's going to be good. It's obvious from the trailer that the narrative is just recycled content from previous similar shows, but it looks gorgeous. I watched some of the promotional content and I was instantly intrigued by the backgrounds and world design. Like I said, I'm not expecting much from the narrative, but I'm so interested in the visuals. It kicks off the episode with a fight scene and my suspicions were confirmed. It looks amazing. A really nice, almost watercolour art style. Great use of the colour palette too. Unfortunately, the narrative doesn't take long to expose itself. The dialogue is so uninspiring and the premise is completely ununique. Similarly to the last show, I'm having a really hard time engaging with the story. I keep feeling like I've heard it all before. We're barely 10 minutes into the episode and I'm already bored with the show's lack of creativity. The dialogue is so incredibly boring. I mean, they're failing to write basic conversations. Even the voice actors sound bored with the script. With big chunks of exposition, unnatural dialogue and no connection to the characters, the rest of the episode was a bore. I'll give it props for its slightly interesting world development at least, and the obvious nice visuals, but apart from that, this was a really poor episode. The final episode I'll be watching in this video is Dimension W, a show I'm going into completely blind, so let's hop in. It seems like a pretty awesome looking sci-fi series so far. I'm really loving the art style too. There's a bit of exposition at the start, but unlike others I've mentioned in this video, it spends time building interest before explaining. This is a pretty simple technique, but it makes exposition a lot more bearable. Character designs seem to have that similar unique aesthetic to the world design. Not quite sure what's going on with the story, but it doesn't seem to be a focus just now. There's lots of information to take in, but it seems they're holding context for later. And oh, a dodgy CG scene there. And now a really awesome fight scene. I'm getting some really cool late 80s sci-fi vibes from this. Coming to the end of the episode now, and Dimension W seems right up my street. Strong, stylized sci-fi with a subtle narrative. Obviously this will be a real test to maintain for a whole series, but the first episode showed a lot of promise. Well, that's all I've got time for in this video, but there are still some shows that I wouldn't mind checking out, and judging by the amount of surprises this season, I'm sure there's a few more hidden gems I haven't seen. I went into the season with very low expectations. There wasn't much to shout about beforehand, but there have been a number of really good shows, some with fantastic potential. My favourite has to be Showa Genroku. It's the most unique seasonal show I've seen in a very long time, and I'm quite excited to see where they'll take it. But what were your favourites? Make sure you post your first impressions in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to click the like button and share it around. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe.